Welcome to Mirror Fighting's Boxing Tonight with myself, Martin Domin, and Rich Jones. You're not hearing things, you're not seeing things. It really is Sunday, and there really is boxing tonight. Eddie Hearn has his first post-Garden show. No more fight camp. He is behind closed doors in Milton Keynes. The show headlined by Joshua Buatsi against Marco Calic. But that is not the best fight on the card by a long stretch. We'll go through a couple of them now. Rich, Joshua Buatsi, probably arguably the best of the 2016 Olympic crop. You could argue a slow burn, really, as a professional. But I think for me, it's definitely the start of next year, late this year, time to really step up. Marco Calic, his record doesn't suggest much. He's won all his fights, 11 of them. YouTube doesn't offer us much. You know, he's on the jab, he's tall, he's rangy. But really, I think a comfortable night for Joshua Buatsi tonight.
Yeah, you'd think so. I mean, it's been a strange one for Joshua Buatsi. Obviously, like you say, he's looked like the most talented, sort of the one of the Rio Olympians that's on for the biggest, sort of going to go on to the biggest things. But I think it's been something like 400 days now since he last fought for various reasons. You know, he had a couple of fights called off due to illness, and then the coronavirus crisis hit. So, you know, it's just a perfect opportunity for him to just get back into the ring, have a bit of a tune-up fight, get himself sharp again. And I think although we don't know much about Calic, he's got a decent amateur background. He looks like, from what we can see of him, like he'll be fairly sharp and technical. So, you know, Buatsi's going to have to be sharp. He's going to have to be sort of quick on his feet, quick to the punch. And yeah, if Buatsi's at his best, you think he's probably going to be looking for another comfortable win to sort of really kick on next year and push on the next sort of 12, 18 months.
Everybody talks about the Anthony Yarde fight, of course, but I think, let's be honest, you know, Matchroom, Frank Warren, those fights, however many dinners they have together, if that even ever happens, we're probably not going to see that soon. For me, it has to be a very good domestic fight next for Buatsi. I've completely the name has slipped my mind of who I think he should definitely fight, and it has been mentioned. Help me out. The guy who fought Beterbiev.
Callum Johnson. Yeah,
that's the one. Callum Johnson. I think.
Yeah, I was actually listening to an old interview from Buatsi this week, and it was interesting to hear him talk about Callum Johnson. Actually, you know, he's obviously a very sort of respectful, humble guy, Buatsi, and he was talking about how, you know, he was at the time he was a British champ, and if anyone wanted his belt, he'd fight anyone in Britain. But he sort of acknowledged that Callum Johnson had sort of been at a higher level, and you know, obviously was probably the best in Britain at that time. So I think, you know, he certainly sounded open to facing Callum Johnson. I think that is the sort of fight that you've got to be looking at as the step up, the sort of logical step for Buatsi after a fight like this. You know, it's a tricky one because he's fought some opponents so far that you look at them on paper and you're like, that could be a tough test. You know, it's a decent little step up. And then he's just come through with flying colours. I'm thinking, you know, like Quinlan, who I think fought Chris Eubank Jr., Liam Conroy had a decent record when they fought for the British title, and he just kind of blew them away. So it's a tricky matchmaking situation when you've got someone who's looking so good and you want them to sort of go through the levels without, when they're blowing through some of those levels without being tested, it can be a tough matchmaking job. So hopefully for Buatsi, he can, you know, make light work of Marco Calic and then, you know, look at bigger and better things, and maybe a fight like Johnson would be the next step for him to, you know, move a step closer to the world title that I think everyone believes and wants to see him achieve.
For sure. And, you know, you mentioned matchmaking there, a great unintentional cue. From tomorrow, Monday morning, we're going to be sending out a weekly newsletter called Monday Morning Matchmaker. Please do subscribe. You can check it out via our Twitter account, and we'll basically run through some of the fights from the weekend and give our thoughts as to what's next for the winners and losers. Moving on to, I would argue, probably the best fight on paper on the card, Chantelle Cameron against Ariana dos Santos Araujo for the WBC Super Lightweight World title. Two fighters who had contrasting fortunes in 2016. Chantelle Cameron didn't make it to the Rio Olympics. Dos Santos Araujo did. And I mean, this is a completely pointless fact, but she actually lost to the same fighter in Rio who beat Chantelle Cameron to prevent the Brit from going to Rio. The Finn, Maira Potkonen, who went on to win bronze. She also beat Katie Taylor. So there you go. That is what I know of the Brazilian. Again, there's not a huge amount of footage out there or anything like that. She's only had 6 pro fights despite being 38. So again, probably not got too much left in the tank, but a very good body puncher. She's only stopped one of her opponents, but very good body puncher. So I actually think this could be a great clash of styles.
Yeah, I think it can be quite tough with some of these fights when we see them announced, and obviously we know a fair bit about Chantelle Cameron, and then you see sort of Araujo announced, and you're straight on BoxRec having a look at what what she's going to offer, trying to see what footage you can find, and I think from all accounts it sounds like it'll be a pretty tough fight for Chantelle Cameron. I mean, she's had it pretty tough so far in her career. Like you say, she missed out on Rio. She had a very sort of start to a professional career, and now she's sort of found herself signed by Matchroom. It's a massive opportunity for her. She's finally got that world title fight she's been after, and she's going to be sort of desperate to take that. But like you say, Araujo, 38, maybe doesn't have an awful lot of time left. It's now or never for her as well. So I think, yeah, like you say, the styles seem to gel. It's a massive, massive fight for both fighters, and I think we're going to see both of them leave absolutely everything in the ring again, and should make for another cracking fight.
It's very difficult to talk about women's boxing without mentioning Katie Taylor. And I'm sure Katie Taylor's tired of being mentioned in interviews with every other fighter under the sun, and I'm sure those fighters are bored of being asking. But this is if Chantelle Cameron comes through, that is a potential fight. This is a division up from where Katie Taylor has sort of unified the lightweight division, but she's fought at super lightweight before. At some point, you would imagine Katie Taylor will have a domestic clash, and this would put Chantelle Cameron probably at the front of the queue.
Yeah, exactly. I know Chantelle Cameron's been quite open in the fact that she'd love to fight Katie Taylor. And I think they're the sort of fights that Eddie Hearn's probably looking at as well. He's signing a lot of top female talent. Chantelle Cameron coming in. Obviously at Fight Camp we had some great fights such as, Natasha Jonas against Terry Harper. And I think the fights with, the big sort of British and Irish, domestic names, Chantelle Cameron versus Katie Taylor would certainly fit the bill for that. Interestingly, I saw when this fight was announced actually that Araujo had, when she fought Katie Taylor in the amateurs, actually gave her a standing count. It was a bit of a controversial one. I know that Peter Taylor, Katie's coach at the time, and Dad was very unhappy with the decision to give the standing count. But Araujo's been in with Taylor before and given her some challenges. So it's going to be interesting to see how Chantelle Cameron, deals with her. And if she can get the win, then she's certainly going to be pushing for that Taylor fight, no doubt about it.
Yeah, should be a cracker tonight actually. And listen, the final one we're going to run through is in the heavyweight division, Alen Babic against Niall Kennedy. I'm not sure about Alen Babic. I mean, I know boxing loves a character, and characters love boxing, and it needs it. Especially at times like this is the perfect time to sell yourself. And Alen Babic is certainly a character. We still don't know a huge amount about him in terms of in the ring. He did beat Shondell Williams. No, Sorry, I'll start that one again. Shondell Winters in Fight Camp. But listen, Winters is a cruiserweight, so again, we're not really going to learn too much from that. But he did what he had to do, 4 fights. Now Kennedy, this is a proper, if you like, fight. He's had 15. He's only lost once. And if anybody watched After the Bell this week, Declan Taylor's very keen on Niall Kennedy and had a bit of money on him, and the odds have certainly come in. So I do feel like we'll get a true sense of where Alen Babic is in terms of his future.
Yeah, absolutely. Alen Babic, like you say, he just walked through Shondell Winters at Fight Camp. It was a really box office performance. It was all action. He came out swinging, just basically walked straight through him. But like you say, Winters really a cruiserweight. And I think the big question really with Babic is how far can that style take him, because eventually he's going to come up against a bigger, stronger man who can keep him away with the jab, and he's just not going to have the size and power to just walk straight through them. Obviously Niall Kennedy's been around for a while. At least he's got experience. He's a bigger man, and the question is whether or not he's strong. It's the level at which Babic comes unstuck with the way he fights, and if Kennedy's strong enough and wise enough to keep him off him and drag him into the later rounds. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But it's really, really tough to call this one. Like you say, there's so many unanswered questions when it comes to Babic. But yeah, it's going to be a fascinating fight. You've got two really interesting characters, chalk and cheese, really. Babic obviously got his alter ego, the Savage, where he's, very, very animated, you can say. Whereas, Niall Kennedy, quite, got a great story. He was sort of a guarder in Wicklow, ended up fighting out in America a lot recently in Boston. And he's had some really impressive wins out there, actually. He lost his last fight, but he's beat some people with winning records, had some good performances, and, maybe gone under the radar a bit being in Boston on some sort of smaller horse shows. But, you look at his record and he certainly can fight, and it's going to be interesting to see how he matches up against Babic.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he sparred Anthony Joshua as well. So, Joshua doesn't pick his sparring partners lightly, I'm sure. So those are the 3 fights we've picked out from the card tonight. If you want to watch, it's on Sky Sports Arena from 7:30, and then it's also on Sky Sports Main Event from 9:30. And of course, after the bell will actually be on Tuesday this week, we will bring you a recap of all the action and look ahead to what's next, as I said, for, well, I'm not going to call the winners right now, obviously, but for the winners and for the losers. Thanks very much for joining us, and we will see you again soon.